Listen closely. You can read every book on self-love, binge every TED Talk, fill journals with affirmations, and still go to bed feeling empty. You can whisper, "I love myself," 1,000 times in the mirror, and still recoil when someone gets too close. Why? Because no one ever told you the truth. Not your teachers, not your parents, not your self-help gurus. But Carl Jung did. He left behind a truth that most of us spend our whole lives avoiding. You cannot love yourself, truly, until you understand what you're projecting onto others. This isn't just about theories or shadows or psychology buzzwords. This is about why you've struggled to feel deeply loved, despite how much work you've done. And it starts with this. People aren't just people. They're mirrors. That last relationship that cracked your heart open, that one friend you secretly envy, the coworker that instantly irritates you for no reason, none of them are random. They're messengers. Every emotional charge you feel towards someone, whether it's love, lust, irritation, or disgust, is a reflection of something unresolved within you. That's the mirror at work. You might find yourself drawn to people who make you feel small, or irritated by people who are loud, bold, expressive. What no one tells you is this. You're not reacting to them. You're reacting to you, to a part of yourself that you've hidden, denied, or disowned. Let's say you're constantly attracted to people who feel free and spontaneous. You might admire their recklessness, their glow, their refusal to conform. But deep down, that admiration is tinged with pain because you've built your life around control, around doing everything right. And somewhere in your soul, there's a version of you that longs to break free. That's the version you see in them. Or maybe you're constantly irritated by arrogant people. They walk into a room and you instantly bristle. Ask yourself this, honestly. Do you secretly crave more confidence? Do you judge them because part of you is afraid to admit your own need to be seen, respected, admired? That's the shadow. That's the part of you that you buried long ago, and now it shows up wearing someone else's face. Here's the twist. Attraction and repulsion are just two sides of the same projection. You don't just project onto lovers or enemies. You project onto everyone who stirs something strong in you. Every time you say, "They make me feel tasti hampuensi," you're missing the real question, which is, what are they reflecting back to me that I haven't made peace with? Your triggers aren't flaws, they're signposts. But to use them, you'll need the one thing most people avoid: brutal honesty. You'll have to look at yourself and say, "I feel this way not because they're wrong, but because something inside me needs to be seen." This is the heart of what Jung meant when he said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. So think of your emotional life like a hall of mirrors, and every intense reaction you have to someone else, that's a part of you screaming to be reclaimed. Not punished, not repressed, reclaimed. Now, here's where it gets deeper. You don't just do this to others. Others do this to you. You've been a mirror too. Have you ever noticed someone lash out at you and you have no idea why? Or someone put you on a pedestal you never asked to stand on? They weren't reacting to you. They were reacting to themselves through you. And when you realize this, really grasp it, something huge shifts. You stop taking things so personally. You stop over-explaining yourself. You stop trying to manage other people's emotions. Because you realize, most people aren't seeing you. They're seeing their unfinished business reflected through your presence. Let that sink in. This doesn't mean you tolerate bad behavior or accept mistreatment. But it does mean you begin to interact with the world from a new place. Clarity, compassion, and conscious choice. You begin to ask not, why are they like this? But, what is this here to show me? And here's the magic. When you start doing this consistently, your relationships begin to shift. Not because you force them to, but because you've started integrating the fragments of yourself you used to exile. The people who once triggered the hell out of you, they lose their power. Not because they changed, but because you did. You'll start noticing that the emotionally unavailable partners, the dominating friends, the chaotic dynamics, they stop appearing. Or if they do appear, you'll see them for what they are. Opportunities to make a different choice. Because now, you're not chasing love to fill a void. You're connecting from a place of wholeness. That's the paradox of healing. When you stop looking for someone to fix you, you stop attracting people who reflect your wounds. You start attracting people who reflect your truth. But don't expect this to happen overnight. This isn't magic. This is inner work. And like all real work, it requires patience, curiosity, and honesty. So here's your invitation. Start watching your relationships like a scientist. Drop the judgment. Pick up a notebook. And write down the people who stir up strong feelings in you, positive or negative. Then ask, what qualities do they represent? Where might those qualities live inside me? Am I rejecting them or longing for them? You'll be surprised at how much insight rushes in. Let me offer you a simple exercise to begin this practice. Write a letter to your most triggering relationship, but don't focus on them. Focus on you. What did they show you about your needs, your fears, your desires? This letter is not for them. It's for the part of you that needs to be heard. Because healing doesn't come from changing other people. It comes from listening to yourself. And as you start doing this, you'll feel the shift. The noise will quiet. The desperation will ease. And something new will take root inside you. Love, not as something you chase, but as something you become. Not a reward, not a performance, not a transaction, but a frequency, a state of being. And when you live in that state, by now, real connection that people in your life aren't just people. They're mirrors, and your reactions to them, they're not random. They're messages. But the real question is, messages from what? The answer, your shadow. Carl Jung didn't just talk about it as a metaphor. He saw it as a living, breathing part of your psyche. A part that's quietly been directing your relationships, your self-image, and your sense of worth without you even realizing it. And if you don't make it conscious, it will ruin your relationships. So what exactly is the shadow? It's not evil. It's not your dark side. It's the part of you you've shoved underground. The shameful parts, the angry parts, the selfish, insecure, arrogant, needy parts. But also, the wild parts, the powerful parts, the intuitive, assertive, brilliant parts you were once told were too much. The shadow isn't just where you bury what you hate about yourself. It's also where you bury what the world taught you was unacceptable. Think back. Were you called too emotional? Too sensitive? Too loud? Did someone shame your curiosity, your ambition, your passion? What happened next was unconscious, but deeply impactful. You began to exile those traits, to lock them in a dark room, to pretend they weren't there. And over time, that room became crowded. And those rejected parts? They didn't disappear. They just got louder. Here's how it shows up in your relationships. You meet someone. There's a spark. But the more emotionally invested you become, the more anxiety creeps in. Suddenly, you're hyper-vigilant. You overthink. You worry about being too much or not enough. Why? Because your shadow, your rejected parts, are terrified of being seen. Terrified that if someone really knew you, they'd leave. So, instead of letting love flow, you sabotage it. You withhold. You test people. You cling or push them away. Not because you're flawed, but because your unintegrated shadow is running the show. And until you confront it, you'll keep playing the same role in a different scene. Same patterns, different faces. Let's make it real. Do you constantly attract emotionally unavailable people? It's likely that a part of you fears emotional closeness. You crave love, but fear vulnerability. Why? Because your shadow associates love with pain or loss. Do you fall for people you want to fix or rescue? That's not love. That's projection. You're trying to heal yourself through them. Do you feel abandoned again and again, even in healthy relationships? It's because a younger part of you, your shadow, never had a chance to feel secure, and now it hijacks every interaction to protect you from reliving that wound. But here's the thing. Your shadow isn't your enemy. It's your protector. Everything it does, every self-sabotaging behavior, is a misguided attempt to keep you safe. And the moment you stop fighting it and start listening is the moment healing begins. Let's talk about how. 1. Name it. Don't shame it. The shadow feeds on denial. So the first act of healing is awareness. When someone triggers you, pause, write it down. Not the drama, not the story, the feeling. Ask yourself, what exactly am I feeling? What does this remind me of? When have I felt this way before? You'll notice a pattern. And that pattern always leads back to a younger version of you. A version that was hurt, ignored, judged, and still lives inside you. This isn't weakness. This is the gateway to your power. 2. Reframe the saboteur. When you catch yourself spiraling, overanalyzing, distancing, lashing out, don't beat yourself up. Instead, say, I see you. I know you're scared, but I've got this now. This simple act begins to shift your relationship with yourself. You're no longer controlled by your shadow. You're in dialogue with it, and that changes everything. 3. Write to your shadow. One of the most powerful tools you'll ever use. Sit down. Write a letter to your shadow, not with judgment, but with compassion. Tell it, I see you. I know you've been trying to protect me. I know I rejected you, and I'm ready to understand you now. This begins a reconciliation process that no therapist, book, or external relationship can replace. Why? Because you're reconnecting with yourself, and that's the foundation of all healing. 4. Feel what you've been avoiding. There's no shortcut through this part. You have to feel the sadness, the rage, the loneliness. not to drown in it, but to stop running from it. Remember, emotions are messengers. They're not dangerous, they're just data. And when you allow them, you reclaim your power. The shadow only controls you when you're afraid to feel what it holds. 5. Set boundaries, even with yourself. Sometimes, the shadow wants to pull you back into old dynamics, to chase love, to please, to overfunction. Catch yourself in those moments and say, no, we don't do that anymore. Boundaries aren't just about other people. They're about the agreements you make with yourself. Protect your peace, protect your progress, because the more you reinforce new behavior, the more your brain rewires. That's not spiritual fluff, that's neuroscience. 6. Create new templates for love. It's not enough to say, I want a healthy relationship. You have to show your nervous system what that feels like. Start small. A friend who respects your space, a mentor who sees your potential, a therapist who holds space without judgment. These become your new emotional blueprints, your new normal. And from that foundation, you stop tolerating what once felt familiar but was always toxic. Here's the final truth of this chapter. You are not broken. You are just divided. Divided between the parts of you you've accepted and the parts you've abandoned. Shadow work is the art of remembering, of reintegrating, of becoming whole. And when you do, love stops being chaos. It becomes calm. It becomes clear. It becomes yours. Not because someone gave it to you, but because you gave it to yourself first. If you're watching this, chances are you've been here before. Not just once, maybe multiple times. Different partner, same heartbreak, same anxiety, same confusion, and the same question lingering in your mind. Why does this keep happening to me? That question right there, it holds the key to your freedom. Because the moment you stop blaming others and start asking, what is this teaching me about myself? That's when everything begins to change. This is the moment where your transformation truly begins. Not with fixing anyone else, not with finding a new partner, but by turning inward. Because here's the truth, you don't attract what you want, you attract what you are. And if you haven't healed your inner wounds, you'll keep drawing people and dynamics that mirror those wounds back to you. Not to punish you, but to wake you up. Let's break it down. The pattern loop. There are certain types of relationships that feel magnetic, as if the universe aligned to bring you together. But over time, that magic becomes chaos. You argue, you chase, you pull away, you make up, you break down. Then it happens again. It's not a coincidence, it's a cycle. And cycles repeat until you understand them. We don't just fall into relationships. We repeat what's familiar, even if what's familiar is unhealthy. Why? Because your nervous system is programmed to equate familiarity with safety, not happiness, not peace, just familiarity. So, if your earliest experiences of love involved emotional distance, criticism, unpredictability, or conditional affection, you'll find yourself drawn to people who recreate that feeling. And until you become aware of the pattern, you'll mistake intensity for intimacy, chaos for chemistry, and control for care. Common patterns that keep you stuck. 1. The savior complex. You fall for someone who's broken, lost, or unavailable, and instead of setting boundaries, you try to fix them. Why? Because deep down, helping others distracts you from helping yourself. 2. The chase. You always fall for the person who pulls away, and the moment someone shows you consistent love, you lose interest. That's not chemistry, that's fear of intimacy. 3. Emotional absorption. You take on your partner's moods, needs, pain. You abandon yourself to stay connected to them. It feels like love, but it's actually emotional enmeshment, and it slowly erodes your identity. 4. Repetition compulsion. You keep dating different versions of the same person, different name, same wound. This isn't random, it's your unconscious trying to rewrite an old story by repeating it. But healing doesn't come from repetition, it comes from awareness. Where it all begins. Childhood templates. To break the pattern, you have to go back, not to dwell in the past, but to understand it. What did love look like in your childhood? Were you praised only when you performed? Were emotions safe to express? Were you heard or ignored? These early dynamics created your internal love map. They taught you what to expect from others, what's acceptable in relationships, and most importantly, what role you needed to play in order to feel loved. That role, whether it was the caretaker, the peacekeeper, the overachiever, became your identity. But here's the thing, that role isn't you, it was your strategy. And now, it's your cage. Awareness is the first breakthrough. Take inventory of your past relationships. List them out. Ask yourself, what drew me to this person? How did I feel most of the time in this relationship? What part of me stayed, even when I knew I was hurting? Notice the themes. Awareness alone doesn't change everything, but it changes you. And when you change, your relationships follow. From pattern to choice. Healing isn't about swearing off love or building walls. It's about learning to respond rather than react. When someone shows you a red flag, you don't rationalize it. You respect it. When your body tenses up around someone, you don't override it. You listen. This is how you move from pattern to power, from chaos to clarity. But you can't do this with willpower alone. You need to retrain your nervous system to show your body what safety, stability, and consistency feel like. This happens in small ways. Keeping your promises to yourself. Spending time with people who don't drain you. Practicing stillness. Noticing when you're triggered, and choosing differently. Every time you honor yourself, you rewire your brain for healthy connection. Rewriting the story. Your past does not define your future. Your patterns are not your destiny. You are not broken. You are conditioned. And what was learned can be unlearned. You can create a new blueprint. One where love feels safe. One where you don't have to prove your worth. Where you don't have to shrink or chase or perform to be accepted. But that starts with you. You must become the partner you've always needed. This isn't self-help fluff, it's deep work, nervous system work, shadow work, inner child work, and it begins with one commitment. I will no longer abandon myself in the name of love. When you live from that place, when you make decisions based on self-respect instead of fear, you stop being available for relationships that hurt you, and you start calling in the ones that heal you. This is your turning point. This is the moment you stop waiting for a different partner and become a different version of you. The version who sees the red flags and walks away. The version who doesn't mistake intensity for love. The version who builds boundaries not as walls, but as invitations for real intimacy. The version who finally knows love isn't something you chase, it's something you create. There comes a moment in your journey of inner work when something profound begins to shift. Not with fireworks or fanfare, but with a subtle, unshakable certainty. You begin to feel different, lighter, freer. This is not because the world has suddenly changed, but because you have. You've stopped searching outward for what was always within. Love. This part of the journey is not about finding someone to complete you. It's about discovering that you are already whole. Not perfect, but whole. And from that place, everything changes. The way you relate to others, the way you view conflict, the way you show up in the world, it all begins to align with something deeper, more real. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And in the final stages of inner transformation, you begin to embody that truth. You no longer chase after love, validation, or belonging. Instead, you radiate it, not because you're trying to be something, but because you finally are. Let's talk about what that means in practice. True self-love, the kind that reshapes your entire life, is not a feeling you wait for. It's a practice, a commitment, a series of small, intentional acts repeated until they carve out a new reality. You speak to yourself with gentleness even on the hard days. You set boundaries that protect your energy without apology. You choose relationships, projects, and habits that nourish you instead of depleting you. And as you do this, something extraordinary happens. You begin to trust yourself. You trust your intuition. You trust your voice. You trust your needs. And from that trust grows an inner peace that no one can take away. Not because life becomes easier, but because your foundation is finally secure. This shift is not just personal, it's relational. When you love yourself unconditionally, your relationships transform. You no longer enter into them from a place of lack, but from a place of abundance. You are no longer looking to be rescued. You are no longer trying to prove your worth. You are simply showing up, fully, honestly, and without pretense. This is the moment where your love becomes expansive. It stops being a need and starts becoming a gift. You offer compassion without losing your boundaries. You express truth without the fear of being abandoned. You forgive, not because others always deserve it, but because you no longer want to carry the weight of resentment. You begin to understand that love is not something to earn. It is something you are. And with this understanding comes the deepest transformation of all. Your capacity to connect expands. You see others more clearly, with fewer projections and more presence. You hold space for their process without trying to control it. And you no longer abandon yourself to keep someone else comfortable. You are whole, and that wholeness is magnetic. But this doesn't mean the journey ends. On the contrary, it begins again, each day, each choice, each moment. Living from love requires constant realignment. Old patterns will try to return. Triggers will surface. But now you meet them with curiosity instead of judgment. You say, "Ah, here you are again. What are you here to show me?" This is where emotional maturity is born, not in suppressing emotions, but in listening to them. Not in controlling others, but in holding yourself accountable. Not in perfection, but in presence. So what does it mean to truly embody this kind of love? It means allowing joy without guilt, rest without shame, pleasure without punishment. It means celebrating your light and honoring your shadows. It means being human, gloriously, imperfectly, fully human. And finally realizing that's more than enough. When you reach this space, you are no longer performing your life. You are living it. And your presence, just your presence, becomes healing. You walk into a room and bring calm. You speak and others listen, not because you're loud, but because you're real. You love and people soften, not because you complete them, but because you remind them of their own wholeness. This is the gift of becoming love. You realize the greatest relationship you will ever have is the one you have with yourself, and everything else flows from there. Not as a strategy, not as a performance, but as a natural consequence of your own inner alignment. So, if you've made it here, if something inside you is awakening, if you feel the pull to live differently, to love more deeply, to show up more fully, let this be your confirmation. You are ready. Not ready because you're flawless, or because you've mastered every shadow, or because you never feel doubt. You are ready because you are willing. Willing to keep choosing yourself. Willing to keep listening. Willing to keep loving, even when it's hard. And in that willingness lies your power. Because the truth is, you don't need to become someone else to be loved. You only need to become yourself. Radically, honestly, unapologetically. Thank you for coming on this journey. If this message resonated with you, take a moment to reflect. What part of yourself are you ready to welcome back? What is one loving act you can take today? Not toward someone else, but toward you? And if you're ready to keep growing, keep healing, keep discovering, know this: the next step on your path is already waiting. Let's keep walking it together. I'll see you in the next video.